Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Perspective Philosophy, where we try to better our perceptions of the world through philosophical discussion. In today's episode, I'll be discussing philosophy with another, philosopher, philosophy chat, and it's going to be a fun stream. He's going to be talking about one of my previous videos, which was on determinism debunked, in my response to Alex O'Connor, which he responded to. And so, rather than just doing a response to my response, rather than responding to his response to my response, I thought we could just have a chat and, have a nice conversation. Hopefully he's around. I haven't heard back from him. We're supposed to be obviously having a chat, but basically it's probably, Christmas Eve, things happen, and I totally understand. So if he doesn't turn up, then we're just going to have a nice Q&A, and if he does turn up, we'll have some nice philosophical conversation with an interesting and capable guy. So yeah, hopefully he does turn up. But we shall see. We shall definitely see. So, radio, my people, my fellow crypto commies. I also thought I could play a game for you that's a little bit different. Similar to Fall Guys in the sense of it being very easy to play. But with the added benefit of being philosophically relevant. Just messaging Marty. How is everyone tonight? And I hope everyone is having a very Merry Christmas. Oh dear Lord, what's happening? Am I... Oh. I'm just gonna sort that out because I do not want any of the volume. Right. Sweet. Oh no, I just closed the... No. The music. Ooh. Right. So, I missed the first part. Who is he talking to today? Cosmic Skeptic, but he probably won't show. It's not Cosmic Skeptic, I'm afraid. It's Marty. I don't know how Alex is. I hope he's having a very Merry Christmas. Yeah, Marty's the philosophy chat. He runs a Discord server, which is in the description below. Not Discord, yeah, Discord server, and he also runs a Twitch channel. He basically talks to Destiny a lot, and is very engaged in philosophy. He's very well read, understands a lot of continental philosophy, and I don't even think it's his primary discipline, although he is a postgraduate, I think, in psychology, but I'll have to double check. The reason that you misheard that is because Marty responded to my response to Cosmic Skeptic. So it's easy done, I understand. We're going to talk about determinism and free will and whether causation can apply to mind, because Marty holds very similar views to me in terms of metaphysics. And yeah, just needs to, we're just going to kind of talk about it. His Twitch link should be in the description below. I think I'll put his Twitch in there. I definitely put his YouTube, and his YouTube will definitely link to his Twitch. I'm hoping anyway. Yeah, his Twitch link's there as well. So until then, I thought what would be fun, at least, is we'll have a normal Q&A and a nice Christmas Eve Q&A. But also, I thought we could play a different kind of game, something more philosophical. Kind of philosophical in its origin. Okay, so I hope you're ready for this. You all know the myth of Sisyphus, right? Well, get ready for... Man. Right, you can see it now. Okay, cool. Get ready for Rock of Ages. This is a quite an old game, but I love it. You basically play Sisyphus rolling a boulder down the hill. Let's just start where it starts. You know, actually, I'm actually going to unmute this game. This is actually just a fun, stupidly fun game. I'll turn it down though, just in case. So yeah, this game is like, I really enjoy this game. It's stupid, it's great, and it's, as I say, it's kind of philosophically relevant. We are in Thermopylae. So the idea, right, is you are Sisyphus, right? And Sisyphus has gotten frustrated from rolling the rock down the hill, right? He's sick of pushing the rock up the hill and then it rolling back down, and so has decided to use the rock as a weapon to overthrow the gods. First one he fights is Hades, and now we're in Thermopylae fighting, I think probably like Leonidas or something. I don't know why they've picked Thermopylae to fight Leonidas and stuff, but I don't mind, man. I think you build like structures as well. So like, yeah, you can build like structures to slow their rock down. And like, you play this game where you've got to like... So wait a minute, watch. Haha! Right, so like you put your own defenses up, but then you've got to like navigate your rock into their... Oh, no, 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 no! No! You've got to roll your rock into their gate and break their gate first. But this is... I just thought it was relevant because of really just the myth of Sisyphus. And obviously Albert Camus. It's kind of like... It's kind of this whole thing of like, you know... Oh god. Ah, get off me! Oh no, I'm getting... Obviously the more damage your rock takes, like the less damage you do to the wall. And like the more speed you build up, the more damage you do to their gate again. Huh! Oh my god. Right. I did like no damage. Okay, so now I need to build some like defenses and stuff. So his rock's rolling this way. So I need to slow that down. Right. So I think the catapults are good, to be honest. But it's like making sure the catapults don't get like wrecked. Because the catapults are... I think putting catapults here. And then trying to prevent him from actually getting up there. Yeah, we're just going normal boulder. So, let us go. Tell us what you think of this game, guys. Do you think this is weird? I love this game. I don't know why. I think it's... Oh, for God's sake, I did it again. Ah! I love the face of the like kind of like troll face of the boulder as well. It's just like a troll face. Here we go again. Haha! Ooh, pretty close. Pretty close. I don't know if you like this game or not, guys. I think it's pretty fun. I'm just going to basically make that route inaccessible and then just put as many like barriers as humanly possible, so that like he's got to like force himself into like all the traps. Yeah, and we'll just put a cow there as well. I don't agree with using animals for this kind of as weaponry. I'm just going to let everyone know that. Why do I do this every time? I'm bad at every game. Why do I have to be bad at every game? Obviously, once I've done this one, I'll come back to chat. Oh God! Yes, catapults. Take them out. Oh, Jesus. Oh, no. Like if you smash their stuff as well, I think you get like points. But I'm trying to like save as much health as humanly possible for my boulder. Haha! Squish. Okay. So that's Rock of Ages, guys. I thought I'd just show you it. I don't know what you think of it. Yeah. But I enjoy it. I just thought I'd play the one game to show you like what the crack was. And obviously I'll go back to Fall Guys for the rest of my life. Hopefully Marty actually turns up. I don't know if Marty is going to turn up. I know that like I had issues like basically turning up the last couple of times, so I can't really judge him for not turning up if he doesn't. But I do hope it's not like, because he said that he was annoyed that I didn't get back to him and stuff. But it's like I said, I was like really sorry, and I didn't have access to my laptop. Why couldn't some sort of atemporal being predict every single one of our actions if he has perfect knowledge of every single atom in the universe? Okay, so one if they're atemporal, then like it's a different set of 1 second. It's like a different it's like whether they're inside of time. Like there's actually like a debate raging on about like whether they would be inside of time. If they're inside of time, then are they affected by time, and can they interact with time? And then if we talk about like how like the 4th and 5th dimension, so like the 5th dimension can access the 4th dimension at any single point. It's one of those things where I would say that even if they had perfect knowledge of the physical universe, you cannot have perfect knowledge of every single action or every single possible action within it. That would be like essentially indeterminacy, quantum indeterminacy. So even if they could predict the movement of every single atom, the knowledge of every single atom, the quantum mechanics, from what I understand of it anyway, is kind of not atemporal. Is actually, is it atemporal? I know that it's I know that like for example like energy is like with the Higgs field is created, like there is two particles are manifest and destroy each other, and it's energy borrowed from the future. And it's like I have, like if I'm honest, I could not tell you necessarily how it works. And I know that in terms of space time, that two atoms from different parts of the universe can interfere with one another, and so you'd have to basically like do what they have in like Star Trek, like a Schrodinger compensator, which would be able to compensate for every possible alternative, like it would have to compensate for quantum indeterminacy, and I don't think that would be even physically possible necessarily. And then in terms of, even if it was, they may like, it's like an individual, like even if they were to know everything that does happen in the universe, like let's say it was like a start and finish, and big PP, absolutely welcome. Welcome, vegan gays. I would say that the individual probably wouldn't be able to know for certain how an individual would behave in every single scenario. So if you were to like rewind and go back. Do I? Oh shit. Oh shit, sorry. I haven't even. Oh man, I'll have to check out the videos. I haven't even like. I've just been so busy. I'm really sorry. I need to check the videos out. Vegan Gaze has edited some videos, for you guys, like of me for you guys. So yeah, like that's gonna be cool. I'll probably put one of them up for Christmas. Actually, have I not replied? Have I not? Oh, here's Marty, guys. Oh, here's Marty. Wait, one sec. But yeah, Marty's here, so that's pretty cool. Thank you very much, Vegan Gaze. Everyone say thank you to Vegan Gaze for helping the channel out. Really appreciate it. Do I like Naruto? I haven't even watched Naruto, if I'm honest. Rob open statement B if I was to convince someone to go vegan. If we can avoid animal suffering, then why shouldn't we? If we should avoid the suffering of others, then why do we propagate said suffering in our most normalized everyday actions for the most trivial reasons, yet be inconsiderate of the suffering that is of such a great magnitude that it is comparable to the greatest horrors and atrocities of human history, to a suffering that the individual alone faces is beyond comprehension when you think of the torture and death, being born into confinement and beaten, sheltered from the sunlight your entire life, and then ultimately slaughtered and then fed to another individual who could eat something which did not feel. Why would we do that? So that would probably be like my opening statement about veganism, like off the top of my head. I'd probably write something better if I or think of something better if I had some time. Donate to Big PP via Streamlabs and have your comment read out / on screen. Yes, absolutely. If you donate more than £5, it reads it out for you. I don't even have to read it out. You get like a sexy Welsh voice reading it out. One second, I'll just pin that. Right, and I'm going to invite Marty in now, guys, so be ready. Just tapped you. Oh. I'm like the worst at replying to DMs. I don't even know where I am anymore, man. Oh, thanks, man. I genuinely care about the animals. Do you recall a video PP did with Vegan Foot Soldier and ask yourself, like they were talking about NTT? I can't find that video anymore. Anyone know? Which one's that? You have to like refresh my memory. If you're stranded on an island and you had plant foods there where you could live off, and animals you could choose to herd animals. Why do you need when you don't need to do? Is that right? Yeah, the desert island. It's a good way to look at it. To be entirely honest with you, Rinnigan. The desert island one is just like it's a really good. Wait a minute, can I not hear Marty? Hello, Marty. Where art thou? I'm not sure where Marty is. One second, guys. I'm back. Right. Marty's coming, I think. He's here. He's here. Join call when thou art ready. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Marty. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty well. Am I coming through?
Yeah, coming through. I'm gonna turn you up a little bit though. One second. It's just my side. Me Discord's turned down. Talk now, would you?
Talking?
Talking.
Talking?
I think you're still.
Talking.
I'm gonna turn you up. Right up. I'm gonna turn you right up. How you doing? Just to let everyone know, Marty's had COVID, right? You know that horrible plague caused by the consumption of wild animals, and that's why he's probably going to sound like he's dying most of the stream. So we should all, send our support and our, their love to Marty and wish him well. And we genuinely hope you're feeling okay, man.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I'm gonna be streaming on my end too. So yeah, just to introduce the chat room to Perspective Philosophy, who I've been talking to for some time now about philosophy. Luckily, well, maybe unluckily, I don't know. We're both Hegelians, so. Um, oh, let me actually turn on my mic. Well, yeah, I should probably do that on my stream.
Yeah, man.
Um, okay, so we wanted to talk about causation in your video today.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah, man. I thought because you obviously did that response to my response to Cosmic Skeptic, and I thought rather than just like continuing the responses like ad infinitum, then we could just, actually just engage.
Yeah. I figured you showed me that video a while back ago. But how have you been doing otherwise before we get to that?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. Pretty sure I had COVID as well, but I don't think like I got like. Oh God. One second. I think someone's at my door. I will be 2 moments, guys.
Let me I'm gonna set up this video real quick. Hmm.
Sorry about that, man. Had someone at the door.
It's no problem.
Right. So now to philosophy. I don't even know what we're saying now. I've totally lost my train of thought. The festivities have attacked our philosophical domain. The Academy's too festive for its own well-being. Right. So, yeah, I think obviously we're talking about like causation and determinism, and obviously that video that I made in response to Cosmic Skeptic.
I don't even know cosmic skeptics. I'm
He's a
guessing
hard determinist.
yeah, okay, so it's just the normal, really bad view that everyone on the internet
Yeah,
has.
yeah. And obviously the view I was taking is a more continental approach of more of an existentialist nature, like a combination of like Sartre, Hegel, a little bit of Kant thrown in there for good measure. I heard you telling us off saying that like Kant wasn't the first person to come up with with idealism, and it's like, oh man. But he was the first to like obviously talk about like apperception. But you rightly told us off for that. And yeah, like
Well, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, yeah, so it was like more of like a like I don't think we disagree on very much from the video. Like it seemed that we agree on a considerable amount, but there are like I think a few points of disagreement. So if you want to like elaborate where you disagree with my understanding of free will, and perhaps we can try and like work through it.
Yeah, so I don't. It's really hard to actually tell from the video whether we disagree or not. It really depends on what view of causation that you actually have, because it's kind of hard to even tell what view of causation you sort of have in the video. Um,
Yeah,
Obviously, there's something to do with the mind, but I don't think it's really in dispute whether or not understanding causation to some extent is obviously going to require a mind.
yeah,
The the dispute is what type of causation we take into account. So if we're causal primitivists, which means if we're Humeans about causation, if we're causal necessitarians, if we are causal eliminativists like Russell, if we're realists and we hold a powers view, perhaps Stephen Mumford or Aristotle. So these are the sort of questions that I'd be asking. Or if we're causal counterfactualists, right? Like Lewis, basically. I mean David Lewis. So if if there's no antecedent condition A, then B couldn't have happened. So the counterfactual situation that it didn't occur, basically the causation wouldn't have occurred. And I think any sort of account of causation that isn't just sort of a powers view of where things are going on and their sort of dispositional qualities of events or objects. I'd rather call them powers or processes myself. But I think the view is kind of wrong. I think the other views, um, I think the other views kind of don't work in virtue of them having less explanatory power than the sort of powers view.
well, I think one of the important things to consider is like obviously like when we talk about explanatory power, like obviously like compatibility with other obviously like epistemic norms and conventions, right? Like for example, like the scientific paradigm, like something that would outright reject science is it's not necessarily going to be wrong. Like obviously it could be right, but it does seem to have to be extrinsically less like into well, it seems to be less intuitive. At least I'd say. But like obviously, like I know that some people, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because some people thought that my view was a rejection of causation as a whole, like as if I was rejecting any notion of causation applicable to individuals and even the physical universe. Well, no, I do believe in the causation in relation to the physical universe, and I do argue for a notion of causation post hoc to mind. So, like, and that's why I brought up things like ideology and the way, and I think you even said, like, this seems like, contradictory to my original position, because I was talking about how people could be causally confined by ideology, but then also saying at the start that we're indeterminate. And so I could elaborate on that sort of, on that contradiction. I could elaborate on where I see the way I understand causation in relation to mind, and hopefully you can tell me where you think that would place me in your understanding. Shall I do that?
Sure. But hold on just a second, because I woke up not too long ago and just realized it's pretty freezing outside, so I'm gonna get some socks on.
No problem, man. Yeah, look after yourself. You can't like
Yeah, it's just my body. It's pretty cold, as you can imagine.
Well, I was gonna say, just make sure you keep yourself warm and safe, man.
Yeah, sure. It's on the tail end. Well, it's going on the tail end right now. I think I might be just about asymptomatic, so it's only 10 days of isolation now. So I'll be right back.
All right, good luck, man. All right, you get away from. That's right. Now where you think you're going? Stop him. Oh, sorry, red man. Huh. Let's go, lesbians. Just heads up, the audio is better on Marty's Twitch than on here. I don't know why. Thought I'd mention it. Oh, really? Oh, that's sad.
Okay.
Hey, man. How you doing?
I'm back. I'm doing okay. I got all my coughing in before I put on the mic.
Are you using the same mic for your Discord as your Twitch?
Yes.
I don't know why then. Someone sent me chat that your audio is coming through better on. I don't know if it's just your audio or if it's just audio in general.
That's oh dear. Let me check my properties actually. Yeah, it should be live audio. And yeah, I don't have my camera on or anything right now, so.
I have no idea then. Oh, so yeah, should I just elaborate on my understanding of where I see how causation affects mind? So essentially, so essentially, I just understand causation to be post hoc for mind. So I understand that we live in the world of the phenomena. I don't think you disagree with that, and that the phenomena is a construction between individuals in relation to language and the conceptual web that we coexist and that we co-create. That's essentially what I would say is like my primary argument I'll say my primary position for why mind is fundamentally in relation to the construction of reality, because the symbolic, the conditioned reality is part and parcel a construction of mind. So we know about tables and chairs and all the atypical metaphysical examples because of our engagement and conceptualization with reality, which has ultimately allowed us to understand and divest various aspects of reality. I think that's very a Hegelian position as well, that the metaphysical divestations of reality are dependent upon our mutual engagement and cooperation to understand reality. The relation of being and nothingness, basically allowing us to understand reality. And I think I try to explain that in the video. And so what I would say is that existentially, the world of the phenomena only comes around past the point of existence. So the existence of the phenomena is entirely dependent upon the engagement of mind within the common domain from which we live. And so to talk about mind as being and essentially all of our epistemic norms and conventions. So, for example, our like science, like material science, exists in this phenomenal world. It's a world in which we can ask questions and find answers, whilst the pure sense data world is flat and incapable of providing us with any information and is purely experiential. It's something that we can experience as raw data, as like flashes of color, feelings of textures, smells, tastes, but it doesn't provide us with information from which we can construct arguments and theses about. And so when we talk about determinism being a thesis, we are talking about it relating to the world of the phenomena. And if the world of the phenomena is as much of a construction of mind as it is of any material which is external to mind, let's say an infinite, as Hegel talks about the infinite, like space or material, then what we have to understand is that to postulate a cause prior to that phenomenal experience coming about would be absurd. It's impossible, because we would have to have a mind which could analyze reality prior to it being analyzed by mind. And so to say that something caused an object, caused mind to exist, is to postulate that the world of the phenomena pre-existed the mind which constructed it. What else? I would probably as well say that after that point oh God, I'm currently losing the game I'm playing. After that point, we can have notions of causation which apply to mind. Like, for example, I believe in addiction. I believe in, ideological bias, in prejudice, and so on. I would say that.
Well, let's put a hold on the rest of what you're about to say before I
that's
get some
fine.
sort of clarifications on what you mean, because there's a lot that you said, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure how all of that is relevant. So maybe you could explain, but also just for some clarification's sake, I'm not really sure what you mean that we live in the world of the phenomenon. Are you drawing some sort of Kantian distinction between the noumenon and phenomenon, or are you just jettisoning the idea of the noumenon altogether? What do you have to say there, I guess?
So I don't believe that the world, for example, I'm not going to draw a distinction between the world of the phenomena and the noumena, in the sense that there is this inaccessible world from which we can never gain information. Instead, I would say that the world that is unconditioned is accessible, in the sense that we understand that it's unconditioned. It's kind of like it's kind of like in its infinite form, if it was in its infinite form as the pure experiential data, it's inaccessible. But through symbolic representation, we can create an understanding of reality which constructs essentially a one-to-one ratio which coheres with reality itself. But that is still the symbolic world and symbolized world, and it'll always be that way until we reach like absolute correspondence with our symbols to the point in which subjectivity is no longer required. Essentially, I think that's like the end of absolute spirit, as Hegel talks about. If you're familiar with that.
So if I'm understanding correctly, you're just you're rejecting at least something of a Kantian notion, that is to say that there's nothing completely unutterable about the world in principle, right? That
Yeah, I
everything is
reject that. Yeah.
okay.
But what I would say is that just because the noumena is not totally like there isn't this inaccessible world, that there is also, that doesn't mean that there isn't aspects of reality which are unconditioned and unknowable, like or unknown at this point. Like I think we do need to like differentiate between, let's say
Well,
that
that is
would,
the noumenon, by the way. I
sorry.
mean, depending, that can be an aspect of the noumenon, by the way. I mean, the idea that there are epistemic conditions, right, that one would have would mean that at the sort of opposite end of those epistemic conditions, you have something that, in virtue of the limitations that we have of those epistemic conditions, have noumena. Uh, Now, you're just basically saying something like, as long, I mean, we obviously don't have perfect knowledge, and if we
Hmm.
don't have perfect knowledge, we don't have a full, a full perception.
Metaphysical understanding of reality. Yeah.
Okay, sure, yeah. I mean, I agree with that. I find the idea of there being some sort of hard limits to understanding the world to be sort of unprovable regardless. I guess in a sense, I also agree with you that everything is phenomenon if we understand um, that to mean something like an identity statement between our experience and how the world is. Not in the sense that everything is, literally within the mind or anything like that. It's just basically saying that um, our experiences are of the world if and only if they are actually true, right? So if I'm correctly perceiving the tree to be green and it is green, then there's an identity relation between these two, is how I put it.
But yeah, but it's like it's to understand that the way in which we have even constructed those conceptual, it's like I would argue for like a constructivist framework that is being applied to reality rather than an abstractivist framework like someone like Bertrand Russell. I'll be arguing for someone like Peter Geach or something like that.
Okay, so abstractivist, as in you don't think rather that these sort of concepts that we're using, that we're employing to the world are just fictions, right? You think that the universals are actually embodied within the world,
I think that
and
the
so
universals are embodied in the world, like logos, right? For example, I believe that logic is a as aspect of being.
okay,
Um, but I would differentiate between how we construct and understand the world in terms of our symbolic representations, so like in our signs and signifiers, and so the experience of the phenomena and like how we understand and like engage with objects, and reality, which is unsymbolized, which this symbolic representation applies to, but then may not find like fully capture. There's like a really great Blanchot quote where he says like, "For me to say this woman, I must take her flesh and blood reality away from her. I must destroy her, annihilate her." And that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, it's not that it's that there is a movement to the phenomena from like the most more primitive experience in language, but the phenomena still captures a small, a certain view of reality. But like obviously, as our conceptual framework grows and grows, we become more capable of capturing more and more of reality, and condition reality in such a way that we can understand those like hidden aspects, those things that weren't captured in our symbolic representations.
yeah. I mean, I think that's fine and all. I don't really have a problem with anything you've said. I think we agreed with this on our PMs, is that we're both conceptual realists, and we're both realists about universals. Um, Because there's a sense, I think, when I'm experiencing certain types of objects or certain types of processes like electromagnetism or gravity or homeostasis, I'm not just seeing like different types of particulars within, say, a human body. I'm literally seeing, in a way, the same phenomenon over and over, sort of that form being reinstantiated in multiple types of places. And in that sense, I'm also a realist about formal and final causes, basically forms in the Aristotelian
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, purpose and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I actually offered an argument basically within my chat room about being a sort of realist about forms, and I was recently reading a book by Michael Thompson called Life in Action. It's a very, very good book in defense of forms in biology, and he basically says you can look at the material biological forms all you want, and you won't be able to conclude based upon just those um, a sort of way of distinguishing something about life that's irreducible. You need to get to forms. Why? Because if you cut off like a cell from a human body, there's a sense of where functionally it's going to act different from when it's actually in relation to the body, right? It's going to
Hmm.
participate in a larger context and something larger than itself when it has that dynamic relationship. And so dynamic relationships allow us to see a larger context, a sort of form or a functional purpose
Function,
that
yeah,
maybe.
the function of like the various like metaphysical aspects of reality. But the issue is that like obviously the way in which we understand this, and even in Aristotelian terms, depends upon how we distinguish reality, right? So like it might be true that like the individual is part of like a universal, but then the way in which we understand that individual kind of depends upon like how we construct then the genus from which the individual's in. And it might be true that like, so for example, if I was to like point the aspects out of like a zebra, that like those aspects of a zebra are all true. Like you can find them in relation to every other zebra. But when I talk about that genus, but for me to like metaphysically divest those aspects of the zebra in the first place is a intentional state in which two individuals, or at least two individuals, have engaged in a conceptual, in a in a discourse, a dialogue, or a dialectic, in order to affirm or deny each other's conceptualizations of reality. And I would say that's probably my primary position of why metaphysically mind is essential to this phenomenal reality, because the phenomenal reality is a product of individuals engaging with each other within discourse to understand the unconditioned, or attempt to understand the unconditioned by adding a signifier, a symbolic reference. And that symbolic reference then gives us access to a new metaphysical reality, which before we didn't have access to. Like, for example, the concept of a zebra. It's like, okay, the experience of a zebra existed, but our understanding of the zebra and our ability to conceptualize of the functions, for example, of the zebra and its different metaphysical properties, let's say like its function, its its efficient causes and so on like that, is unavailable in pure sense data.
Yeah, I don't actually believe in sense data myself. I think that that's sort of a myth, and
Do you really
a
think?
myth.
Oh, okay, okay. I'd love to talk about that, because like maybe it's just my own ignorance there, and maybe it's the bias, because I did study quite a lot of empiricism, and maybe I'm just using outdated language from that. But when I think of sense data, really what I'm talking about is what Hegel calls the immanent experience.
Yeah, but the imminent experience, of course, gets brought and then sublimated, right, into a conceptualized experience, and
Yeah,
so the data is actually sort of a myth.
yeah. You mean like it, because it's instantly conditioned into, like, even the ready to hand experience is a conditioned experience.
Yeah, I have problems with Heidegger for applications that we have, but yes, I think the notion of even any perceptual experience as mundane and as subtle as it is always going to be conceptually latent and is always going to enter into a sort of conceptual relation. Even redness, right, which we might take as a sort of primitive, because how are we going to talk about redness other than experiencing it, seems to require for that to participate in some sort of semantical holism in the sense that it's not green, it's not yellow, it's in this color spectrum, it has a wavelength, right? There's a certain way where we do understand color in relation to other types of colors, meaning other types of
Like even
concepts.
chromatic color or something like that, the understanding of like its relation to other colors and stuff, it might seem that it's like I think Geach actually talks about this. Like it seems like it's abstracted from reality, but but if we look at it, like these are logical operators applying to our experiences.
Right. Yes, and yeah, and that and the sense of data theory. This is I mean, for your chat, and I guess for your chat's benefit and for my own, since data theory basically was postulated by the sort of classic empiricists as a third in between experience and the world, basically some sort of realm that had some sort of neutral relationship to the two. It was tacked onto experience as a way of making sense of it before it came into the picture of experience by the mind. But the good thing about experience is, especially according to Kant, that it already has the aspect of receptivity, um, conjoined with spontaneity. So we don't need sense experience. We don't need this sort of given tacked on to it, and we can kind of get rid of it. But
I,
I don't think that's too important for the conversation about
I
causation.
kind of agree anyway. Like to be entirely, as I say, like I guess the main thing I'd say is like obviously I'm taking it in some respects. I always like to think of like almost the state of nature position, like, and I think even Hegel kind of starts there. It's like this idea of like, right, well, what's the foundation of the dialectic, and if it's a historical dialectic, when you think about what's the foundation of like essentially metaphysics itself, and the first observations that could have been made by any primitive being,
Mm,
and like, I
I
don't,
think
sorry.
even the primitive relationships to the world are going to be conceptual. Um, Unless, of course, you're talking about, you know,
No, I don't think they will be conceptual either. Like, I don't think, for example, a dog or a cat is. But well, I think they may actually have some concepts, to be entirely honest with you, which I think we can see in their problem-solving capabilities.
yeah.
But
What I mean by that is that so anything in the world, or anything in the heavens and the earth, is going to have conceptual content. But that doesn't mean that everything in the heavens and the world is going to, or is going to be able to find that conceptual content. So
exactly. And this is the
rock,
thing. I would say that that conceptualization is the product of mind, and so is existential in origin. Like the foundation of this is the foundation of absolute spirit. And so to go to try and postulate something like psychology might, or sociology, and try to extrapolate how spirit would develop, like how history would progress, for example, would be metaphysically impossible.
what, I'm sorry, what would be metaphysically impossible?
Like to accurately predict the progress of history.
I think that there's definitely, I mean, I think everything in the future falls prey to the problem of induction and therefore to underdetermination. Um, but the way that you sometimes presented your argument made it seem as though there are no predictive patterns of human mental behaviors, which seems kind of odd because
It's
then we have an entire sociological, psychological domain of thought that just does that, right? I mean, and especially there are definitely a lot of things that are very predictable in terms of human nature. You know, I mean, we can obviously tell when a teenager is in puberty why they're acting a certain way that they're acting in terms
yeah.
of their because of their hormones, right? So there's certain types of behaviors within human psychology that are reducible and are easily, I think, sort of explained. Well, not easily,
It
but very
depends on
far.
what we think they're reducible to. So, like a teenager acting a certain way because of their hormones is maybe one thing, but and even then, I'm somewhat skeptical. Like the complexity of psychology alone, I think, even if we do take it to be like an actual like science and be able to create like a law-like structure or something like that,
I
it's
would be
obviously.
wrong, but I would reject, I think, as far as I know, any law-like structure because that's what a powers view sort of commits you to.
Yeah, I,
So
I agree. I think actually McIntyre uses powers like in his in After Virtue. I'm pretty sure. I'll have to double check. Um,
yeah, the problem with laws. is, according to Stephen Mumford, a thing called, you could use the antecedent strengthening test, and that is that if one can just even imagine a counterfactual scenario or something inhibiting one cause, say we were, I don't know, say we're ordinarily talking about a ball, right? And let's say it's spherical and, oh, hold on, I got someone at my door.
That's no problem. I'm now level 10 cat girl. I have a tail. Level 10 cat girl. Oh no!
Where was I? Sorry, I had someone on.
Yeah,
a ball of any sort. Well, I mean, a ball, due to its spherical nature, if it was put on an inclined plane, has a certain type of power, and that is a certain type of dispositional tendency to obviously go down the ramp. But there could be another power, let's say if it was made of soap bubbles, such that it has a certain type of bond to stick to the surface, right? Let's say, especially if it's like, I don't know, wood or something like that. And that can counterbalance the sort of power and inhibit it from sort of falling down the inclined plane in the same sort of way maybe a wooden ball would. And so, given that there were any sort of countervailing forces or anything that would sort of inhibit that, which there always are, right? Because we can't take into account all empirical examples. There's going to be always something to prevent necessitation from occurring within nature. But that being said, there is one type of argument that I think I kind of like with respect to causation, and that it does seem like as we're progressing through science, if you want to call it progress, unless you're an instrumentalist, is that the laws that were developed in the earlier science seem to be greater and greater approximations of certain types of universals that do seem to work in a law-like manner. And so there might be certain types of laws that fit into the mix. But for the most part, I see that very hard or maybe near impossible to prove.
I don't think McIntyre actually takes that view, but I'll have to double check after virtue. I think one thing I was going to say is like I do appreciate the position, to be entirely honest with you. It's interesting. I can't really comment on it so much because I don't know enough about it to give a intellectual kind of response. I'd just be blabbering about nothing really.
About powers or
about powers, yeah.
Okay.
But it's interesting, and I wouldn't mind reading more on it. Rather than just comment like blindly. I suppose, I guess this is the thing, like the idea of progress in this respect, in the powers view. How would you characterize progress in that respect?
No. When I was talking about progress, I was talking about an alternative view in which people might be sympathetic to necessitation,
Right.
because presumably, as we're progressing science, the concepts that we're developing are supposed to perfect themselves or allegedly get onto a concept, a universal concept.
A theory of
right?
everything.
Well, not a theory of everything necessarily, but maybe certain types of fundamental constants.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get to, as you approach the fundamental concepts, you obviously see that the problem of induction, because it's the problem of induction, can't answer some basically what these universals are supposed to be, right? It only approximates the sort of universals, which would obviously in the end be sort of necessities instead of just really great probabilities. But because there is a problem of induction, which some people don't really even consider a problem of induction, it seems as though at best we have dispositional properties that are assessed by just probabilities at most, right? And that's fine. Things have dispositional tendencies, and Stephen Mumford has a pretty nice way of putting it. Dispositional tendencies are in between possibility and necessity, right? They're not just different types of possibilities that could occur at any point, nor are they necessary, but certain types of things have certain types of tendencies that they exhibit, right? I basically strike a match right on a box, and it has the tendency of, getting on fire. It's a very
And
classic.
it seems to align itself quite well with the quantum sort of understanding of things these days. Like obviously everything being an extrapolation of possibilities in relation to like the most fundamental particles. It just so happens that the macro universe is, in the way that it works, is like the most dispositionally likely occurrence. So like Newtonian physics applies primarily because even though there's quantum indeterminacy, the probability of, let's say, like the small fluctuations within reality seem to have very small impact upon the overall probability of the macro universe, like working the way it does. And so that I'm assuming that'll be the kind of dispositions you would kind of point towards. That'd be
Just
right? It's like
anything. They can be magnets, electricity, tornadoes. I generally cash them out as a process ontologist in terms of processes. I actually think objects are a byproduct of various types of processes sort of conjoined together in dynamic relations. I hear someone like Sean Carroll sometimes talk, and he says, that actually it sort of begins to be impossible to talk about the world in terms of just objects or monadic events, because even electrons participate in fields, and so there's really no such thing as an electron.
I think that makes sense. I think that does make more sense, to be entirely honest with you. Like as soon as you start like considering obviously the foundation, but this is one of the reasons why I talked about the foundation of the universe being coming from like energy. Like obviously the it's a very like basic understanding of it, but like it's important to recognize that in the contemporary scientific understanding of reality, like physical understanding of reality, that everything is an expression of energy, and energy is in an interference relationship with its with its various forms. It cannot be created or destroyed, and what we exist in is essentially a combination of various forms of energy interfering with itself to produce like matter, which then interferes with things like the Higgs field and so on like that, to produce like various phenomena which we are experiencing today, and the reason why the universe works the way it does.
You just screwed everyone over in that fall game by getting that hammer and getting in the end there.
Oh,
That's
I
pretty
know,
awesome.
that was brilliant. I was very happy with that as well. I didn't want to stop speaking and just say like how great that was.
No. If it's a moment of which deserves that, you should go ahead and do that. I started playing that game because you were playing it on the stream. And I'm like, I've seen this before. It looks really fun, but it's also extremely frustrating.
Oh,
So.
it can be incredibly frustrating, and I'm usually quite terrible at it. Like I think this is actually just going quite well for once. One second, actually. I think yeah, like I think that we're agreeing on pretty much everything so far. Can you tell us where like essentially where you think that we could have like a psychology that, like, for example, I would say that psychology is useful, particularly psychoanalytics, right? I think psychoanalytics is incredibly useful for helping an individual, but its usefulness comes from the fact that an individual can make a decision within their life in relation to therapy, for example, to change their behaviors, their thoughts, and actions to a more healthy expression of desire, right? And that seems to be a participation that would be rejected by forms of, let's say, behaviorism, which removes the agent as a ad hoc or post hoc explanatory tool, and I see that as incompatible with not only the way that psychology seeks to treat people in terms of therapy, but incompatible with the overall explanation of the phenomenal universe. What about yourself?
So I guess I'm still not understanding the question. Are you asking me what portion of psychology would basically be able to predict behaviors, or
Well,
are you asking more something? Or like, are you asking what part of psychology instantiates the aspect that we have some sort of freedom, and psychology doesn't seem to?
Well, in when I take psychology to be like, for example, a science, which is like trying to argue that humans follow like, and I would usually use the words law like construction, but it can be even a probabilistic understanding where they are. Like I guess it would probably be more of a necessity. I would reject necessitarianism, just
Yeah,
outright.
but yeah, well, mm, yeah, I suppose it depends on because well, again, nothing would sort of occur by necessity. I would say that there might be certain types of psychological laws that would occur given if this is a healthy person. I mean, there are some easy ones to kind of go over, by Piaget and things like that. And the idea is that we have object permanence. The child after I can't remember exactly what age, maybe 3 or 4, after 3 or 4, starts developing a theory of subjectivity of other people. You take a child and you put them in front of a sort of a miniature mountain, and you tell an adult to stand on the other side, and you ask that child who's 3 years old, how does this landscape, this miniature landscape mountain, look like from their perspective? And they're going to tell you, well, it looks exactly like how they're seeing it, right? So the child isn't able to actually embody the sort of perspective of the adult at this age, and after a certain while, they can, and they generally will, unless there is something wrong, I think, with their rationality, right?
Mhm.
Uh,
But then we could
that's
even agree that like that could be the construction of an individual. Like for example, like the way that an individual approaches like the phenomena could be like rationally deducible, which is abiding by like the logos. Like they're abiding by an understanding of reality, which is actually forcing them into um, conceptualizing the world in a certain ways as well. So does language, like obviously socio-political norms, and
as long
as
as we know that these are certain types of near psychological necessities that seem to be demonstrated within every single child of age.
but then it's whether that cause it's whether that cause involves the participation of the agent or not, and I think that's relevant. So like if the individual is non-participatory, and instead like subject to, let's say, physical laws and conventions which dictate their every possible, not only their possible behaviors but their actual outcomes in every scenario. Well, I see that as like essentially defying the foundations of the defying the foundations of the phenomenal experience. So like the phenomenal experience is dependent upon our conceptualizations, which are in relation to our experiences and the way that our rationality constructs and symbolizes the world. And usually that is confined by grammar, which allows us to, communicate and interact and create new signifiers, reinstitutionalize them, and teach each other new things, and better understanding our universe. But to say that it happens prior, let's say like these, like regardless of an individual actually being, you know, um, within a certain language, they would develop a certain way, or regardless of an individual um, or having participation. So like for one of the biggest things I would say is like how an individual approaches their reality can very much dictate the way in which they will experience the possibilities onwards, and it will give significance and meaning that will vary to like their lives. So a good example is like autism, right? So if someone's autistic, they'll approach sociality in a maybe an inhibited way at times. They may struggle to understand people's expressions and intentional states. They may struggle to understand like a variety of different like norms and conventions, which may be available to other individuals. Now, this could be either like arguably like genetic, or it could be the result of external features, and I think that a lot of it is environmental.
I think it's a false dichotomy just to say that there's something genetic and then there's something actually not behavioral, but external. I think they always sort of dynamically develop, and we know actually that genes basically also change from the conception of life to the end right now, or at least that's what I'm hearing from the philosophy of biology.
And that's
So that's
interesting. That's very interesting. I have no idea about that. I
so
can't.
yeah, there's a good argument here actually to be made against biological determinism in that sense that we can avoid this sort of notion that there's something innate about human beings that is just built into their character from the get-go and then just modified in a way, assuming that there's something innate and non-changing there. Or I guess it wouldn't even be modified, right? It would just be there for the rest of their life.
Hmm.
And there turns out, according to John Dupree and Jack Nicholson, nothing like that that we can find.
Well, the way I was
You,
thinking of it was in relation to our psychological states. So, like for example, an individual who is autistic can approach, let's say let's say they do have an issue with their motor neurons. The way they approach that issue in terms of their day-to-day life affects like the future development of their brain, arguably like brain plasticity, but it also affects how they understand themselves and how they understand reality as being separate to the condition. Whilst I see a lot of psychology trying to argue that it is that a lot of like symptomatic responses are the result of, like, for example, behavioral responses are the result of the condition, whilst I see them as a free choice made by the agent, and maybe more likely in relation to like the conceptual schemata, or even like the rational conclusion. Like it might be more rational to conclude something, like, or it might be a mistake that everyone makes. It might be partly rational, like the same. It's kind of like how, like, if we were look at a maths class, everyone makes the same mistake in the class, and it's not because that they are all like determined to think the same way. It has more to do with the fact that the way that the problem is being solved and the way they are taught to solve the problem, or the way that they know how to solve problems, results in a similar issue in their thought patterns and behaviors, right? And like this still allows for the choice of the agent to be a primary feature within their overall like their overall development and so on.
yeah, I mean, I think any good neuroscientist and good psychologist, I actually got a bachelor's degree in psychology. I have sort of regrets about this, but I did take a little bit of neuroscience. But most good neuroscience realize there's a sort of feedback loop between intentional actions, one's biology, and sort of neurochemistry in terms of neuroplasticity. Um, I don't think anyone would. I don't think anyone worth their salt would sort of deny this and view everything as sort of a response to stimuli and just external events. Um, the notion of that kind of mechanical outlook of everything just being external influences without any sort of participation of the human body or the human mind seems to be a sort of outdated view to me.
Perhaps, but I think it's quite a popular view.
Get popular. I think it's a sort of pop psychology view, for sure, and maybe not even a pop psychologist view. Kind of also very prone to a lot of a type of behavioralism, even though cognitive behavioralism is sort of conjoined a lot these days. There's very little people that are just practicing behavioralism, like as someone like Skinner.
Yeah, like the
Um,
pure Skinner's the pure like conditional reinforcement kind of understanding.
Yeah, there's a way of where there's obviously a sort of reciprocity of causation. I've used this example before. Um, People have this type of view of causation. A causes B, and B causes C, and C causes
Mm-hmm.
D. Well, it's actually not like that at all, right? In many cases, it's things like A causes B and B causes A, and within human agents, the effect is its own. They're the cause of their own effect, right? So, in the sense that, for example, when one has a sugar cube, right, in a glass of water, of course the water is dissolving the sugar cube. But there's an inverse relation as well, that the sugar cube is saturating the water. And so you have a diachronic instead of necessarily just a synchronic relationship of causes right here. So of course, when um, there are external stimuli sort of bumping against our body, there's a way of where we're also bumping back against the world, right?
Yeah.
We're evaluating these stimuli and then sort of making them more than just things that we react to, right? We mediate these, and then we can sort of then we can kind of sort of push back in a sense against them sometimes too. So if I obviously feel a door being pushed upon me, or someone slamming a door in my face, we sort of push back on that door, if you will.
Hmm.
So yeah, there's a very sort of primitive sense of how people view causation, in a very mechanistic lifestyle. That's why I actually like the Powers view, because the Powers view doesn't view things in terms of just counterfactual dependence or external stimulation or external causes, but views them as dispositional traits that have a dynamic relationship with other types of things. And so this sort of prioritizes the inner world of whatever type of object that you're talking about, and then views it as something that can either be antagonistic to the external world, in which it still has some sort of dynamic relationship, but it's antagonistic, or one that can have a sort of synchronic relationship. So you can kind of easily see this in a human body, for example. Let's say a foreign microbe sort of enters the body. Well, there's two of ways of which that microbe is going to obviously play within the dynamics of the human system. It's either going to be a pathogen, right? We all know this during COVID-19, or it's going to participate in some sort of way that has a synchronic relationship and actually aid, like some bacteria do in the human body. What determines that? The good old immunity system actually determines that, right? And if it does have a synchronic relationship, we can actually consider that as now a part of the identity of the human body. Something of its own internal causal structure, in the way that a foreign microbe, now a pathogen or a virus or a bacteria, is not working in that same way, right? And so these distinctions and causes obviously require more of a lexicon, more of a vocabulary than just external mechanisms enforcing us, and then we're predetermined by those, right? We have to view ourselves in relation to this causal nexus. Another thing I wanted to say, actually, in relation to that is, if we're always saying we're externally caused by other things, and we keep pushing this sort of external model, we're externally caused by this, and this is externally caused by that, we find out that that's an infinite regress of external things, and we're on the edge of the universe right now. And what causes that, basically?
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. Yeah.
Either you have a god, and then you can ask that same question, or you're going to say, well, there's actually nothing external to it, and that model of placing everything external is sort of silly, right? It should be all internal, dynamically sort of working in some sort of reciprocity, right?
Hmm. It's like
So,
the idea of something being self-causing, in the relationship with.
I mean, there is a lot of things in a way being self-caused, because we have to view that there are certain types of things, certain types of powers, as long as we're realists about universals, that are in a way self-sufficient. Of course, the body isn't self-sufficient, in the sense that it can exist without the environment and food, but it is self-sufficient in the sense that it doesn't relate to everything and everything, because homeostasis is what's occurring in my body, not photosynthesis, right? So there's a certain sense of where there are material incompatibilities with my body, and a sort of, at least, light ontological, what I like to call an ontological containment for who we are, right?
Mm. And I think as well, what you were talking about as well, when this idea of like being absolutely self-sustaining, would probably be talking about like the absolute universal, the thing which encompasses everything. It's kind of like when Parmenides speaks of like when when we talk about and he's talking about being, and this the reality of and I think Russell actually interprets that as a modal understanding of reality, in which for like it's essentially, for something to be, it must always possibly be. And it's kind of the understanding that for something to be self-caused, like what is self-caused is probably the totality of possibility itself.
I wouldn't call it a totality, only because the word totality has, well, maybe
Connotations to Levinas.
I think philosophy that, yeah, I mean, people who say totality generally view the world as a composite of entities kind of conjoined together
Yeah,
through their
I
own
meant it in like a colloquial sense, to be entirely honest with you.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it really makes sense to talk about, and this is why I'm sort of bypass the general cosmological arguments. I don't really think it makes sense to talk about something, external to the universe that sort of causes it.
I
And I think
agree.
Aristotle,
I agree. I think it goes beyond the limitations of not only just language but even metaphysics. And I think I would argue the same thing is occurring within relation to mind. If we're trying to go external to mind in terms of like go beyond the phenomena, and I don't mean like talk about something that say that was physically prior to mind, because like that thing that which is physically prior to mind is the construction of a theory and is an experiential construction of a theory that was produced by mind. That's fine. Like it's a symbolic representation of reality. But when we try to go to the unconditioned, is when I have a problem. Like that experience of unconditioned reality. And I think that when we talk about um, the like trying to remove the participation of agents and like the conditioning, like the symbolism, which gives us arguments and the phenomena itself. I think that's when causation breaks down, and that's why I think that when we look at it, like the problem of free will, a lot of the time when we talk about these materialistic explanations of like human action and thought, is actually the problem of free will is the problem of free will. It's not something that is any real worry, because if we understand that this phenomenal world has causation within it and that we can be caused by various features, um, that doesn't have to necessitate that the individual is predetermined, which ultimately may undermine the symbolic representation of reality to give us this phenomenal world and come to these conclusions and make rational decisions.
I, I wanted to clarify because you keep using the words in this phrase that we can't. Obviously, everything is sort of coded in
Mhm.
with using the mind. You do mean to make a distinction ontologically between epistemics and an actual ontological existence. So there's a sense of where there are literally things ontologically prior to minds,
Yeah,
but epistemics, we did talk about them, right?
but
You
like
require a mind
but then I would say
because
those things that are like a lot of the time those things that we postulate as prior to mind are like are again symbolized. It's part and parcel conditioned by mind. So it's like
there's a certain sense of where that's kind of true, right? But in an ontological sense, of course, they're not symbolized because there is an actuality. There's something that's actually there that requires absolutely no participation of the mind in order for it to act the way that it acts. And then in that sense, there's really no difference between, at least what I think, and I would hope what you think, and just an ordinary old realist, what they would believe, right?
well, I think there needs to be two things to be said there. Like there's epistemics and ontology. So like there would be like being able to construct a theory which related to that thing which we postulate as being prior to the conditioned experience. If the truth maker, quote unquote, that thing which it corresponds to is unconditioned, then the epistemics of that theory don't never pan out, because they rely upon like conditioning to even function. So like if it's something that's supposed to be purely experiential, something that's purely understood in and of itself prior to mind, then it doesn't work. But then if
Well,
we
why
agree,
not?
hmm?
I don't understand that part. What something that's prior to mind.
Like as
So
in prior
sort
prior
of
to
a
like
notion of something being logically prior, and then there's a sort of notion of something being temporally prior. If you read
yeah
the speculative idealists or the speculative realists, someone like Quentin uh, Massieu, like specifically hampers on idealists like Kant on this very issue. I think the entire project is incredibly misguided and silly, and he doesn't understand Kant. But it is important to create a distinction between logical priority and temporal priority.
like as in like I would agree. I guess
Totally.
like I'll try and formulate it in a way that makes more sense, whilst not sucking so bad at Fall Guys. Um, like what I'm trying to say is that if a theory is dependent upon something which is I'll try and think of this, how I'm going to say this. One second. Let's give it a second.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you can take your time.
So, like, you agree that we live in the conditioned world, right? And that when we, in science, when we are analyzing objects, they are part and parcel of this conditioned experience.
I think in part, actually, I mean, yeah, of course, I believe that some of our behaviors are conditioned, but I actually have this sort of rare view that some of our intentional actions are completely unconditioned.
I'm sorry, I meant
And
reality itself, not us.
I think all of reality is unconditioned. I mean, but that's about
Unconditioned.
it. Yes, I think. I mean,
But are we
when
using
we look at
reality in the actual like as Lacan would say, like reality is unconditioned, the resistance of symbolism itself, um, and in which case I would agree. But the what we experience in terms of reality and understand is conditioned. Would you agree?
if there's an identity theory of truth, and that is that our concepts match on how the world actually is, and it's not just some sort of symbolic representation, and there's a certain sense of where the the world works in the way that we describe it. I mean, not exactly, but it seems to. So,
Yeah, and I would say that the way that coincides is in the agent. Like the agent is the locus point from which the world can be understood as functioning in this way, because of their ability to conceptualize and test those concepts against that unconditioned reality. It is like we construct a concept which should allow us to have some form of predictability. That predictability can be tested, and then if it pans out, and it can be logically tested as well. If it pans out to be the case, then it's true and it corresponds to reality. If not, then it's untrue, and we need to go back to the drawing board, reconceptualize, and create a better understanding of reality. But
yes,
when we are applying them, they do actually explain
I,
reality in a real sense.
yes, I think that they literally do explain reality in a real sense. But then I don't see the point of adding Lacan to it and talking about the symbolic order or anything like that, because there's a sense of where what we say is literally true, not just symbolically true, not just metaphorically true, although there are
Yeah.
certain times where metaphors.
Well, I think Lacan's great because I think people take Lacan to be separate to what, like, for example, I take like Zizek's interpretation of Lacan, like when he says like there needs to be no meta language because all language is object orientated. It is in this process of understanding the world, and I would take, like, obviously I know you like Brandom, that inferentialist position that when we speak of P, it implies that P, like, there must be the possibility of P.
Mm,
And I would say that is the case, but then obviously what we are experiencing is possibility, and until we have that corresponding relationship, which then gives us, what we experience is like a conceptual, extrapolation
possibility.
of reality, yeah, rather than the necessary reality from which everything must be, which is why, where theories are only partially correct. It's more of an epistemological issue, but it has an metaphysical kind of purport, because what we're experiencing, and I think it's I think, I don't know if I mentioned this in the video. I think I did. When we talk about, let's say, something like a star, is
Mm.
this is a construction of language as well as a construction of reality. It's us trying to apply a concept and understand reality. And it's very well possible that, when we conceptualize reality to a greater degree, we may understand stars and experience stars even in a different way. That, like, the experience itself is modified by our understanding of it. And if that's the case,
Absolutely, the experiences, absolutely.
yeah,
Um, I agree with it, but there is also a trivial sense of where it doesn't matter, because I hate to sound like Jump here, but reality is reality, and but I mean, I think we agree with that. But yeah, of course experience is modified. With every new data. A newborn is going to obviously see the world differently than a grown ass adult
Mm.
especially in philosophy.
And then
And
obviously
there's
what we have is the
different.
limitations of knowledge as well. So like knowledge is in relation to the subject engaged into reality to make deductively sound claims about reality. And what I would say is that when we are investigating this, this reality and creating these concepts, we are, we are trying to obviously understand reality as it is, but we are constantly um, in a state where we are, progressing the experience of reality towards a state which is more and more correspondent to the way in which it actually is. But it doesn't. At this point in time, it's not actually like that. But what I would say that psychology and be entirely honest with determinism does, especially like predeterminism, is assume that reality would always pan out the same regardless of the participation of the agents involved. Whilst I would say that the participation of the agent constructs reality in terms of the phenomenon and conditions the experience in a way that is relevant metaphysically, just as much as the experiential data, like the imminent experience.
In what way are we saying that we're constructing the world?
Like we're constructing the world in a sense that like the aspects of the world would be unavailable to us in two aspects. They
Because you
would
can't be
be.
a constructivist and believe in the correspondence theory of truth. I mean, if you're a coherentist, we could say something like we constructivist, unless we just mean something like we're creating institutions and we're changing the world through global warming, and then we're literally changing it in that way for our own bodies, things like that. Which I definitely agree with you.
Well, no, I
Um,
would probably take like the inferentialist approach, which I think is like, as I think when Brandon talks about it, I mean, you can correct us. I think if I'm wrong, it seems to imply that we are in this participation, we are constructing aspects of reality, and in such a way that language is allowing us to divest, aspects of reality that would be otherwise unavailable or unexperienceable, even until we apply those, those words. But once we do apply them, they are subject to whether they actually obtain P, which is what we are doing when we are testing concepts against reality. And I think this is when Heidegger, for example, talks about the fittingness of the concept. Oh, Jesus. Now, don't get me wrong. I do appreciate that that like there is a reality that is unconditioned. I just don't think that we can make claims about it. And I don't think that, and don't get me wrong, I do think that we eventually we will have, if we take Hegel to be the case, like with the, in the end of Absolute Spirit, we will have direct access to that unconditioned reality. But that access is still always dependent upon the institutional progression of language games, which have ultimately allowed like certain metaphysical divestations to become possible. And so like there are metaphysically dependent aspects of our reality that are created by the participation in reality. Like, for example, a scientific understanding of the universe and the experience of science itself is constructed by the participation of the agent within an within the epistemological norms and conventions, which actually constructs a narrative of reality, which is then applied to reality. But it can be shown to be right or wrong. Like, I don't see the issue there. Do you think I've said anything wrong there?
well, it's hard to.
It's hard to understand because I talk like a filthy continental and I don't know how to use words. Yeah.
Well, look, I don't. Well, look, I don't have anything wrong with continental philosophy, as you may know. I
Oh, I
think
know,
the
I know,
entire
I know.
is.
I don't have. The words I use are like from the 18th century, I think. And
Well, I mean, I have no problem with 18s. I mean, I use them all the
I
time.
do. I
You
have a
use.
big problem with the 18th century philosophy, and I should probably stop reading it. But I mean, I appreciate it. Don't get me wrong. Well, I do love it. Like it's 19th century a lot of the time, like Hegel and stuff like that. But at the same time, the way it's written is
No,
not
I
the
think.
best.
Well, some of it I actually kind of find contra. When I personally read someone like Hegel and
I don't know how you can read Kant and think that's
Darwin,
okay, man. That makes me feel physically ill.
I find their reading actually quite nice.
I
It's
cannot do
very.
that. You're the only person I've
It's,
ever heard that said, "Oh, I like reading Kant." That's like the only. That's like, you see, that is a.
I, I need whiskey for someone like Locke, but not.
I find Locke easier to read than Kant, if I'm honest. I find
Oh
Hegel.
no, I do. I find it easier as well. It's just so dry and boring, and
It is
like
dry and boring. I
I don't
agree.
care.
Yeah,
It's,
I know exactly what you mean there. Like, I find that about a lot of analytic philosophy in general. Like, oh, like I know that's not analytic necessarily. That's actually like just British British empiricist tradition, but it is very dry. Especially the Anglo-American tradition, really, is what I'm saying. I don't know why it has to be so dry. Um, it just lacks like I think the issue is that some continental philosophy is just too romantic, and then it just you're almost reading poetry.
yeah, it's sometimes it sucks having too much poetry, and it also equally sucks to hear something dry. If you do believe that beauty exists literally within the world, there's perhaps a sense of where Locke is a little wrong because he's not beautiful. But those are cheap. Those are cheap shots, and
He's
there's no
just
way to
hurting
prove
us.
those.
He's a criminal at this point.
Yeah. Um, But the problem I had with what you said is just like I feel, and I don't mean this in a bad way, although it's going to come out maybe in a little bad way. It's like you seem to be conflating epistemology with ontology sometimes, at least in the sense that when we're talking about just an experience, because of course I don't think that there's an actual divide. Once we have something that's true, there's no actual divide between epistemology and ontology. But I don't know what it means to be a constructivist about reality. I know what it means to be a constructivist about ethics, right? So we, in ways, construct laws and social norms and moral norms. Of course, they're going to be derivative to some sense from unconditional principles, such as we should treat people as ends instead of means to ends. We should universalize our judgments. We should act disinterestedly. I think that these ethical norms are unconditional, but I don't know what it would mean. And then I know what it means to derivatively talk about ethics from those unconditional norms, but I don't know what it means to socially, literally construct reality. Um, I know what it means to dialectically progress in concepts
Yeah,
that
that's probably where I
uh,
would like dialectically progress or hermeneutically even progress. You know, like the
Sure. I mean, but you can see nature dialectically progressing by increasing the amount of elements there are within the universe as time goes by. I mean, consciousness didn't always exist. I'm guessing the domains of biology didn't always exist. These probably seem like a dialectical progression of some sort. But I don't know what it means to say that once human beings come into the picture, they are in some way constructivists about nature, unless one wants to say that the paradigms that they're employing are just paradigm fictions. Unless we're like instrumentalists or coherentists about our theories of truth, then we could just get away. We could just lose the word truth. Like some people do this, right? I mean, you've had conversations with Jack Angstretch before.
yeah,
I
I
don't know if
have.
you know this, but
I haven't had too many conversations with him, but I wanted to converse with him in
that's
the.
good, by the way. It's good. But he rejects notions like truth. Why? Because he's a pragmatist and an instrumentalist. So all he has is justified true belief. So what happens when you just have justified true belief? Well, your knowledge is continuously transforming. It has no reference towards any sort of
Yeah, the
truth,
episteme
and
is
therefore,
presented to us in a
and,
certain way, and then you end up in this.
well, right. And in this sense, it's easy to see what it means to be, say, a constructivist of some sense of our epistemological norms or whatever, or our knowledge, but not if you're a correspondence theorist of truth, or you
It's
believe
more
in some
like
sort of
you know when
identity.
it's like when
Yeah.
Wittgenstein says the language is the limits of our world. It's like no, it's not. But language is the limits of our knowledge, and through language we can understand the limits of our world in relation to what is also unconditioned by language, which is why I referenced Lacan in the video. It's like when we talk about, like, for example, that which is it's like with through negation and so on, we can understand aspects of reality which we are yet to like fully understand or like fully comprehend in any meaningful way. Um, And that's kind of like what I would say with that. But I guess like I
Sorry,
guess really I get.
coughing.
Are you okay? I guess what I'm trying to say is that my main issue, especially with Cosmic Skeptic's view, because he's, from what I understand, a materialist in this terms, but he's also a material, like he believes in material causation rather, material determinism rather, or physical determinism, and he also argues that we cannot will what we will, and argues that the will itself is caused by something prior to it. Well, what I would say is that the will um, is the foundation epistemically for the theories that are involved, and so like it's even epistemologically impossible to go prior to the will. But I would also say that the will is that the world is in the way in which we interact with it, um, constructed in many ways by how we interact with it. And don't get me wrong, reality conforms us to it. Like I do, like for example, the rules of reality, like the confines of reality, force us to conceptualize of it in a certain way. But that conceptualization process is still the foundation for what science and logic is actually engaged within. And so I would say that in terms of just purely understanding reality, there is a sense of indeterminacy, which is the precondition of choice. If that made any sense, that like our experience is that our experience of reality and our engagement in reality is the precondition from which we can understand and comprehend reality to gain any metaphysical conclusions or epistemological conclusions.
Um, it sounds like you can correct me if I'm wrong. You want to buy into some sort of libertarian argument which tries to find the unconditioned in nature in a way that is distinct from how Kant would have tried to find the unconditioned. You want to try not to find it in some sort of noumenal or transcendental object, but a part of nature that we just have no direct access to.
Well,
Am I wrong about
like
that, or I mean,
currently have no access to, but like it's more of like that reality itself is the it's just more of rather to say that the individual is a it's like when it's to take the Hegelian account that the reality is actually is actually like an objective idealistic world constructed between multiple agents in a common domain. The common domain is a referential point, but it isn't the totality. It's not the reality isn't reducible to that common domain. It's reducible to the experience of multiple individuals and the common domain, and that's like the thinking of itself. It's like right, we are thinking agents engaged in a common domain, and this is our reality. Rather than saying reality is something external and mind independent, it's to understand that mind is a fundamental integral part of reality, and that we cannot divorce it metaphysically from our conceptions of reality. Like I don't believe in that we reach this absolutely unconditioned reality. That even like so, for example, if we get to the end of like the Hegelian dialectic, what we have is absolutely conditioned reality, which corresponds perfectly with the unconditioned reality. If you understand this.
yeah. I mean, I understand the second half of what you said at least. The first half is what I'm sort of
I
struggling with.
appreciate that you're trying. That's the important thing. Like,
Well, I'm just trying to. I mean, I'm trying to use any sort of background knowledge I have of the German idealists to help me with this, because I'm less familiar actually with Hegel because Hegel and Schelling's view on freedom are some of the most astonishingly most complex views that I've ever seen. They seem extremely interesting, but I'm not really sure exactly what's going on in them. I understand Fichte's view of the self-positing I. Um, I understand what he means by theoretical freedom. I understand what he attempts to do with practical freedom, although I think he fails. And I understand what Kant means by freedom in both the practical and theoretical sense. And Kant might have actually succeeded where Fichte actually failed, even though Fichte came after. But I'm not really sure sometimes what Schelling and Hegel are exactly doing, and that just I would just need to read more of them, and
Well,
for
I
me to
mean, if there was
understand.
one
We're
thing,
all on this,
if there's one like,
all on this journey.
sorry, well, absolutely, I know the feeling. Like, I feel like I need to just constantly read more, and especially with my PhD, I'm not doing enough for that. I can definitely say that. It just seems like there's, and here I am playing Fall Guys. I'm a disgrace. um, but I actually have to probably go off in the next 15 minutes. But what I was going to say is a great book for understanding the Hegelian view on freedom is Free Will in Continental Philosophy by David Edward Rose, who's a Hegelian. And he was actually one of my lecturers at Newcastle University. Really, really intelligent guy, really great. And I think he explains it really quite well. And I think that the way that like to kind of give an example is like it's the way where he kind of explains it is to compare and contrast it against like traditional views of freedom in terms of, let's say, the compatibilist view of like Hobbes and the
There's
exercise.
definitely a sense of where the German idealists, I don't think, fit really anywhere in the picture of the little neat square that analytic philosophy has managed to build. Right?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean,
That's
I think
exactly it.
that
Like the problem
it's just
is the
it's just absurd. I It's just absurd to think that Kant fits anywhere on that picture other than maybe libertarianism, because you have a transcendental slash numinal subject, depending on how you carve it out and think that these are two different things that don't participate in what we'd ordinarily call the world, because he uses a different metaphysical philosophical language, right? And the same thing with Fichte, with the self-positing I as some sort of unconditional principle that comes before any sort of empirical subject, and I'd assume the same thing probably goes for Schelling, that we just have to cultivate different types of tools to the ones that we are seeing here in the age-old debate about, well, you're either a hard determinist, guys, or you're a soft determinist. You're either a compatibilist or a libertarian,
exactly. I think the
and it's
problem
not
really
useful,
is
right?
the problem of free will. Like it's how we're approaching this problem. It's like we've constructed. Like I don't think there is a problem of free will. Um, if you take like an idealist perspective, like especially like as you say, like the German idealist perspective, the problem of free will is not a problem. Like it doesn't exist. It doesn't go in there. It's like, yeah, there's causation, there's agents, and there's free will, and none of that necessarily is contradicting each other. It's when we start putting it into the analytic framework, typically of, are you a compatibilist, are you a libertarian, are you an incompatibilist, then we'll find that these issues start to arise a lot more, and it might be a product of the language rather than a product of reality, and that's kind of how I would approach it. It's not to say that like there isn't causal effects upon humans. It's like, yeah, like I completely agree. Like as I said, like before, people can become addicted to substances, for example. People can become dependent upon like certain aspects of their life. Like you could become like even psychologically dependent, and we know that these are like atypical responses to certain stimuli. Like for example, people become like addicted in some like addicted quote unquote to like fast food or to like sex or like things that aren't necessarily like chemically addictive, that are forcing like a biological response which would lead to like a reinforcement of behavior, but instead as a coping mechanism for like, let's say, their existential pain or something like that. And like all of these are compatible with free will, and they're also compatible with like the psychological analysis and treatment of individuals, but they aren't compatible with a predeterministic understanding of reality which confines individuals' actions and behaviors with law-like constructions which are supposed to give indication of how individuals must behave, given or that they had no choice to behave in any other way, given the scenario, the environmental or external factors of their birth.
I Yeah, I think I agree with what you're basically saying here. Um, Although it doesn't really help me too much with the other aspects of free will that we've gone over here. And I think I might have put a pin in, at least in that conversation. I did want to ask you, I guess, a few other questions with respect to
Yeah.
philosophy, since you mentioned the cosmic skeptic. Um, I mean, do you not? Uh, I know he's your friend, so I'm going to try to be very kind about this.
Yeah.
But do you not think do you think that any of his views on metaphysics are
Correct. No.
yeah, okay, because I mean like
He's my friend, but he's
I
absolutely wrong on metaphysics. Yeah. Yeah. Uh,
okay, because I mean like I'm viewing conversations with him, even with like William Lane Craig, and in order to avoid the cosmological argument, it was the funniest thing I thought. He he called himself, and I know this position, a mereological nihilist.
I know. I
Uh,
think Foot Soldier, who's in chat, calls himself a mereological nihilist as well. Foot Soldier, let us know if you're here. He's a big fan of that position.
um,
Yeah.
well, 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 I think it's probably one of the I think it's probably one of those abysmal positions in philosophy, in the sense that I don't know what it would mean to talk about everything being reducible to the same fundamental. I mean, even if we know what the same fundamental particles of the world are, I don't even think physicists would even care to put it in terms of particles. But if you have even one thing that's irreducible, right, like the cells that I talked about in relation to the body, and that having a different type of power structure, like that just completely eliminates mereological nihilism from just one single argument.
Yeah, I mean, I would
Um,
agree. Like, I mean, like, I think we're both very quite sympathetic to, like, for example, the multiple causes, like metaphysics having, like, metaphysical objects having multiple causes. For example, like
you don't
final
even,
cause, efficient
yeah,
cause,
and you don't even need that. You need to admit one thing that is a form of top-down causation. Because if you have top-down causation, obviously you can't reduce everything down to the sort of explanations of causes from the bottom up. I mean, and it just surprises me sometimes what views people have on YouTube. You have way more patience talking with some of these people than I do. I mean, I don't know how you do it. If I was talking to these people, the first thing that I would just say is like, "What are you talking about?" Like I mean, have you ever read a single book on free will? Have you ever read a single book
I think that's
on
what Rem does.
meteorology?
I think that's what Rem does as well. Like he likes to do that. Like he just gets frustrated really quickly and just starts like just going like, right, I'm not going to speak to you until you've read more of the literature. Goodbye. I'm sympathetic. Don't get me wrong. Like I get it. But then I think one of the main issues is that we need to make it accessible to these individuals, like who may not have had the benefit of reading like like the right texts even, but also may have had maybe like trained in a different field. Like I think Cosmic Skeptic, for example, he goes to Oxford. It's very analytic tradition, and and he'd be given and he's an undergrad, right? He's been given, he's been given a lot of what to read, and his reading lists will be directing him and conditioning him as an academic in a certain way. And this is why I struggle like a lot to talk to analytics, because we do end up speaking different languages, right? And it's just like trying to break down those walls that are like accidentally put up between us, like where we're not engaging with each other's literature to even necessarily understand what we're saying, but then it's conveying like how do you convey like German idealism to an analytic philosopher? Do you know what I mean? A lot of the time it's difficult. Like it requires you to like almost explain a whole new vocabulary and a different approach to philosophy, like a different disposition towards philosophy. But like if we don't have that, like at least if we don't attempt to like engage with each other, like I mean the analytics do it to me all the time, like and like like Lewis, just try
Oh
and
yeah, I
understand,
mean,
like
no, I mean, it's all but that's also abysmal, right? It's the idea that I have to play within your language game, and and if I don't use your words, then I automatically lose,
yeah. But I do think
um,
that that
or I'm
is
incoherent,
very,
right?
if I'm honest, I do think that is more common in the analytics. I think there's a lot more natural language philosophy in the continental sort of side of things, at least in my experience. I don't know about yours. But and the words that we use, I think sometimes are more intuitive. There's a lot of subject-specific words in analytic philosophy, and I think that comes with its emulation of the scientific like kind of paradigm, the scientific disciplines. But I don't know, man. Like, I don't like. Obviously, I'm not bashing analytic philosophy. Like, there are some brilliant analytic philosophers,
Oh
who,
no, no, of course, no,
and I
of
think we
course.
all agree with that. And we can even say that, the way that they put things across can like almost transcend that language barrier, because they manage to put it into layman's terms. Sometimes they manage to put like something incredibly complex in such a way that someone just getting into philosophy can understand it, and they're the best writers, aren't they? It's just really hard to do, but it is like trying to force you into that language game. That is a lot of internet philosophy, I think, as well. And internet philosophy is like bad analytic philosophy. You know what I mean? Like, it's like analytics who are approaching it all wrong, even in the state of analytics. Like, the disposition is just, it's not even um to get anything but one-upmanship upon another individual by using like terminology that they might know, and then claim victory when they don't seem to understand like
Hmm.
the concept being conveyed, even though they might understand it if it was expressed in different terms and the conversation could continue. It's
What do
sophism.
you? Yeah, yeah, no, I understand. But what do you? I mean, what do you think the state of YouTube videos on the internet are with philosophers right now?
It's
Because
varied.
there's a sense of I agree with you that some of them are talking about different languages, but I also think there's a sense of where a lot of the big ones are misinterpreting what philosophy ought to be like by giving over to, I think, very undergraduate-esque um, positions, and then they become the most popularized because they're the easiest to comprehend.
Yeah, I
I
completely
know
agree.
that's elitist and absolutely horrible for me to say. I don't. I'm trying to not make it sound. I'm not trying.
I actually completely agree with you, to be entirely honest with what you've said there. I think one of the best examples in the continental side is just how many people you find that are defending Nietzsche, and a Nietzschean like
Oh,
position, or like or the postmodernist positions and stuff like that. And you've got to consider, as like when you talk about like even the undergraduate. Oh, Jesus Christ, I'm bad at this game. Even when you talk about the undergraduate like sort of like interpretations of philosophy and stuff, it's like philosophy is not the only discipline teaching philosophy. And I think like take someone like Vosh, right? Now I disagree with Vosh on a lot, and I think there's contradictions within his system that are so unbelievably apparent that like anyone who had read Karl Marx or anyone like that could not call themselves a Marxist and hold these epistemological positions, especially in terms of like normativity. Like, it's nonsense. He's rejecting meta narratives and history, yes, affirming a meta narrative in socialism. And it's like, right, well, you're a walking contradiction. But like, he's a sociologist and he's learned philosophy in sociology, and he never even directly, from what I'm aware, engaged in theory. And then when he did engage in theory online, it's like a half-assed kind of, I've read a little bit of theory, now I can educate you all on theory. And it's like, yeah, you can. He's like, what I think is the issue with and I will say, like, Cosmic Skeptic isn't this, like, Cosmic Skeptic, Rational Resistance, they're not these kind of people. They're more developed, and I think at least they actually know what they're talking about. Even if I do think they're wrong, I think they know what they're talking about in relation to what they're talking about. But you get these kind of people that are like the 5% people, that they think that they can teach someone else so long as they know 5% more than the person they are teaching. Well, the reality is they don't even know their name if they're teaching 5% more. Like, you don't even understand anything about the subject. You're an absolute amateur. Please do not try this. It's like if I was trying to if it's like me. It's like if I go to the gym a couple of times and let's say I build some muscle and I get like physically capable, but then like after like a month or two, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna call myself a personal trainer. It's absolutely abysmal. It's like, no, please stop. But that is also a big issue with philosophy and stuff on in YouTube, in the YouTube community. But at least I guess there is one benefit, that people are at least discussing some philosophy. But then it's becoming almost a tool of division, where people are now using it as a way to propagate their own like ideological stances, rather than actually considering the way the world is, and the way that they're approaching philosophy is just a form
that's
of.
that's that's the biggest problem that I see is people are latching on to way too many isms, whether it be feminist. I'm not, by the way, advocating not to be a feminist here, by the way, but before I say this, way too many isms: feminism, Marxism, postmodernism.
Mhm.
I'm a determinist. I'm a compatibilist. it's just like, and
Nouns.
the way of the way of doing philosophy, or the way of doing even any sort of intellectual inquiry, should not be done like this. It should be done
I completely
basically
agree.
by observing all of history and all of philosophy, and then being able to abstract from your own prejudices and beginning with the evidence and then getting to a conclusion, instead of beginning with a bias and then
Yeah,
working your way
the
up to
inductiveness
where you
of
want
like
to.
internet philosophy is tragic. It's just people trying to inductively justify their positions over and over again. Like as you say, like especially with politics, it's absolutely trash with politics. Like how many tankies I've even seen online, right? I'd consider myself a socialist, and I didn't realize I have to argue so much against people that are advocating the philosophy of Trotsky and Vladimir Lenin. It's like, what the fuck? Like if you look at contemporary Marxists, there's not really many of them that are calling for violent, bloody revolution, and they're not doing
Yeah.
that because they don't think. The reason they're doing that is because they think that's fucking dumb, right? And you try and get to this position where you're like, right, like, okay, like I get it. People can have like a variety of different political views. I get it. People can have a variety of different like interpretations of text and understanding of of the problems. But the issue is how they are even engaging with the problems is really just to justify the position that entered in with in the first place, and whatever, or even with Vorsh, I think just justify whatever he's feeling feeling at the time. And I think that's even a lot of people. Like a lot of people just want, like, they have these intuitions, have these judgments that they've made, and like preconceived judgments. And then it's philosophy is just, it's sophism. It's just this idea like, right, I'm going to enter a political philosophical contest with someone, like an intellectual contest with someone, act as an orator to justify my position to a crowd, to enable me to fulfill that position to the greatest overall degree possible, within this like social space. And it's like, right, well, you've totally misunderstood the whole fucking point of philosophy, which is like to analyze the position in the fucking first place. Like,
Yeah, no, it definitely becomes a sort of vehicle for them to build their own little Lego block set. And it it's sort of odd to me on how very little I see anyone's mind to be changed.
change. Yeah, I completely agree
Yeah.
with you there.
I mean, I don't know as much about Bosch as you do, but you might have had a
I
conversation.
think
I know
I think
Ray
I'm
had
just
a
angry at
conversation.
him at the minute. Like, so please, like, it's one of
Um,
those.
no, it's okay. I have bigger problems with other people on the internet. Mostly, I think T Jump. It's just like just some of the stuff that he has to say on the
I
internet.
completely
It
disagree
gets
with
me
T
up.
Jump as well. I think I'm supposed to be debating him on determinism, but the way he approaches determinism, I don't know if you watched our conversation. Like, there was a few things like I didn't understand. Like, he takes this like kind of understanding of, like, for example, like one of the things I never understood, right, is like his understanding of the will, right, is just it's not
Mm.
anywhere near similar to mine, and his understanding of metaphysics and reality is just absolutely. And I don't even think we could converse through most of it. And I don't think he's a bad guy necessarily, but we're just not conversing at all, right? Like, it wasn't going anywhere. And then
You should.
one of
Yeah, go
the
ahead.
sorry,
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say one of the main issues that we had is, like, for example, he talked about, for example, if there was an evil demon, like he sees this, like, if we are free as long as it's an internal cause, right? Um, and then like, so kind of compatibilist. But then he's like, the whole thing was like, he posited that I said, like, with the with the evil demon, for example, like he was like, well, no, then your will, like, if your will would have been caused by the evil demon, then it's not free. And I'm like, okay, but then what if there was an evil demon causing that evil demon, right? Or like something higher again, like on an infinite regress, like whose will is
Hmm.
it? And then he was like, well, like it's whoever's at the top, and it's like, right, but what if there's no one at the top? And like we'll have this infinite regress of wills, and he kind of couldn't answer that. And it's like, but then at the same time he was arguing for like a compatibilist position, yet saying that our will is not our own if it was caused by someone else. So like, as long as it, so if it was a conscious being that caused it, so if it was God, an evil demon, then it's not our own. But if it's nature and it's caused in the exact same way, then it is. And it's just like, I was just like, right, okay, but why is there a distinction there? Like, what is the distinction between the demon
Mhm.
and nature? I don't understand. And I was like, he was like, right, well, because they have a will that is like determining your will, and it's like, but they have someone determining their will because because you believe in determinism. So,
Right.
like,
Yeah. There's some insane bullets that are. You should actually watch the conversation between T Jump and what's his name? Hold on, let me believe the name real quick. Because it was the funniest one that I've seen so far. Trent, Dougherty, um, who had some interesting views, but I remember this being one of the types of things. He's basically sort of a Christian apologist. It's fine, he probably debates well, and he did debate extremely well against T Jump. I'd probably get absolutely eviscerated by someone like a professional as qualified as him. But the bullets that I saw that were trying to be bitten at one point was obviously Trent was saying something like, look at the apostles, look at testimonial evidence. He gives us some sort of reason to believe in Jesus Christ, and then it obviously gives us reason to believe in God. And then T Jump ended up replying with, well, I don't believe in testimonial evidence of the apostles, basically. And then Trent asked him, well, why not? Do you not believe in testimonial evidence in any ordinary sense? And he's like, yes, I do. But when it comes to anything related to God, now I suddenly have a different type of epistemology.
oh, what the fuck? You
It,
can't just do that. That's like, right, well,
just like
we'll
just
have
because
one rule for this conversation and we'll have a one rule for the other. It's like, that is actual sophism, man. It's like, all right, I'm just going to change the way in which I argue depending upon the city I'm in. You know.
no, no. If the content of your statement changes, but the form is the same, you have to remain consistent. And of course, he never said the exact words as I said it, but this is what ultimately the conclusion that you should be drawing if you watch these debates and know any of philosophy. But I've noticed with this community, and not just his community, it's a lot of communities, especially even in rationality rules and cosmic skeptic, a lot of the people who listen in, I don't think are familiar with a lot of the problems that are going in philosophy, and then this sort of leads them astray into adopting certain types of positions which are either nonsensical or underdeveloped,
Yeah.
and they see the debate completely, completely different than I do. It's like it's just like I look at the comments and then I'm like, what are we watching even the same video? Like, are we like
Yeah.
how could you come to that conclusion to
No,
me?
I know what you mean. I think it's like obviously academic experience plays a massive role. And this is why I say like one of the best introductions to philosophy I think is academics and like and literature and not like obviously YouTube. That's why I'm not like like when people ask us like what's the best introduction to philosophy, I'm usually telling them like right, well, like not I'm not going to give you a video of someone explaining it if I'm honest. And even me, like I like that I try to take an academic approach to things, and I think at least Cosmic Skeptic does that as well, where they're like presenting positions that are well founded and at least like they can reference thinkers and so on. But like the issue is the real issue is I think it's, to be honest, the disposition to the field that I think most people lack. And that's why a lot of the time I just like I try and recommend like a lot of Plato. Just look at the difference between Socrates and the sophists, and that will teach you what philosophy is about, almost. And it's like that's kind of like why I kind of like think that a lot of these people are like in terms of the people in the comment sections are making mistakes. It's because they're already trying to justify the preconceived notions rather than like see how the world actually is and like form like actual like grounded arguments. And yeah, and I think
Oh yeah, I mean, determinism, materialism, especially within the 20th first century, are extremely palatable and common sense views. But we have to remind our audience that for literally everything except maybe the last 100 years, and for some of the moderns, basically within just before the Enlightenment or Enlightenment, the idea of physicalism and age-old materialism is the minority position, right? I mean, it's just
mhm.
like most people believed in nature actually being infused with spirit, and there being some sort of pagan belief, and that God exists, and he's with nature. then all the rest was basically some sort of classic theistic conception that God created the heavens and the earth, and there he was, you
But
know.
do you not think that this has come about because of that? Like, for example, it's like the antithesis of that position. Like, as Nietzsche understood, like the scientific paradigm in which we exist today, not necessarily in the way that scientists understand it. As you say, there are many scientists who take, for example, an understanding of reality to contain mind and, and spirit in many ways. And have functional like causations and in causes in relation to the metaphysics of reality. But like if you look at, let's say, the scientific paradigm in the sense of the average everyday individual, it's another belief structure. It's another aesthetic ideal. They move from one to the other without actually understanding the
Yeah.
grounding of the positions from which they're adopting. It's like an ideological bias, which is like being propagated through like what they like the power structures from which they, or the authorities from which they
Yes,
coincide with their beliefs.
yes, but this age in particular, and this is always said by cane thumpers, but hopefully we'll rest aside that I'm not a cane thumper. Is probably one of the worst. That's probably one of the
You're
worst in
probably
terms
right.
of
That's the worst part.
it's because of the post. I mean, because, and again, this is another one of those positions I don't want to latch onto the Dark Enlightenment or any of the people that hate technology, but because of science and technology, because of science and technology, and just the triumph of the imperialistic sciences and the triumph of the technocrat and the triumph of how much information that we have, and the idea that we can get to the moon, the idea that we can, see pictures of different distinct galaxies. We see things like Star Trek: The New Generation. We think of the power of science and physics and things
Mhm.
like that. That we're so enamored by the idea that
We're the
nothing could
enlightened.
possibly be. Yeah, yeah, we're enlightened. Nothing could possibly be true other than the physical sciences, and we've reached the pinnacle of history at this point. Well, what does every single person in their history think? That the exact same goddamn thing, right? That they're the pinnacle of their society.
Exactly. It's like the
Um,
Romans, like everyone else is a barbarian and we are civilized, and it's like, yeah, that's slaughtering people, enslaving people, like having games where everyone gets murdered and stuff like yeah, like in today's conception of that, it's unbelievably backward. And I think that's like Hegel's like progression of history, isn't it? It's like this idea like everyone is going to think that they're smart and that they're better than the previous generation without considering their own ignorance. And if you don't consider your own ignorance, then you're not going to develop. It's like you have to be able to admit, and that like almost, I wouldn't take it in a very literal sense, but when Socrates says like all I know is that I do not know, that is like a disposition of philosophy, the understanding of your own ignorance in relation to reality. It's like that you only understand this small proportion of reality when you're engaged in the greater overall explanations of it. No matter how developed your theories are, there are aspects of reality which are usually like the blind spots like within your like cultural like framework, like even ideologically. And like I think the best example is like, for example, the scientific paradigm, which has got people like so hooked on this explanation of like the empirical reality being the foundation of like reducible, everything is reducible to this explanation. And that's one of the reasons I did that video of debunking cosmic skeptics position, is because I'm very much against this like reductionism, and like the scientific reductionism, which I think, or physical reductionism rather, that I don't think explains reality as it is. And another point I would probably make as well is not necessarily in relation to just the overall like well, one of the things I'd like to say is that I think that it's not just like science that's like the paradigm that's enacting. I think we have this coincidence of these like various paradigms, these various institutions which have like propagated and perpetuated their ways to like form like different views within individuals who aren't analyzing them and like questioning that like hegemonic like hegemonic system which is giving them their thoughts and behaviors. Like, all right, like here you go, like this is what you think today. And I think that the one of the big ones again is like, for example, capitalism. And I think another one, like obviously the movements from religion and the change in religion and the rejection of religion, the necessary negation of religion being stupid as well, and this removal of like spiritualism in every single form, and this movement and the to do so by moving it towards a physical explanation of the universe is another issue. And then obviously capitalism benefits from this because it perpetuates something like social Darwinism. So then you have an ideological bias within our state that is being funded in terms of having economic success within individuals who are seeing themselves as superior to other individuals and being rewarded for such behavior, like, you know,
Yeah.
psychopathy and predatory behaviors being rewarded within like our society, and like narcissism and stuff like that, which is justified within like this idea of like nonsense views of like how humans would have behaved in the wild. And it's like you could see that stuff even popping up in like the 17th century in Thomas Hobbes, this like individualism and this rejection of religion and this movement towards like a misunderstood egoism as being rewarded by like the power structures that were forming in this primordial capitalism. And I think that like it's all kind of like conglomerated together in this kind of ideological soup where we're kind of in like what I think could be called like the antithesis of the Enlightenment, and I'd really hope for a synthesis.
Yes, I think I definitely, you said a lot, so it's going to be hard to remember everything you said, but I think I agree 100% on just about everything you said there. There does seem to be a sense of where egoism becomes to be very compatible with capitalism, and this sort of turn towards materialism, physicalism, coupled with atheism, um, kind of creates a weird world, because on one hand, if you believe in that, then you have to deny something like conceptual realism, which means that you have to deny ethics, at least in the sense that there are actually, you know, ethical properties out there. And this puts us in somewhat of a dilemma, right? We want to at least um, we want to at least hang tightly to one thing that, you know, Christians have given us, or really any religion, really, and the Greeks, right? And that's the idea that the good exists,
Yeah,
and
I agree.
and certain types of moral properties exist. But it's also sort of perplexing that we can't actually get into that if we're full materialistic atheists. And I'm not saying that,
And we
you know,
get
atheists
accused when we
can,
do of
uh,
having religious baggage consistently. It's
yeah,
like you must believe in a
of
god,
course, yeah.
and it's like no, not rest. No, you can argue for a secular approach, but you never get. You normally get mocked and ridiculed, especially online.
Well, yeah, you can argue for a secular approach, but as long as you realize that that secular approach is going to have some baggage that obviously comes from more mystical elements, and that is to, you know, incorporate something like immaterial properties within the structure and the actual fabric of the world. I mean, you believe in moral properties and moral proposition, unless you sort of Kantian, where these are just in the mind, and yet you're still going to get those somehow in the world if you think the mind's in the world.
Yeah, I would argue that
Um,
these like that like I would say like obviously subjectivity is the foundation of ethics and Hegelian philosophy, and obviously subjectivity itself
right. There's
existing being. It's so it's
a serious problem with disenchantment. A serious problem, I think, in viewing that there is no purpose in the end of the day in the world. Um, and by God, I mean, you don't have to think that a classic atheistic Abrahamic God exists out there looking at us from the heavens in order to think that, you know, morality exists or that there's purpose in the world. You can see purpose imminently within the world, but you got to look at it, and you have to eventually jettison the idea, or at least possibly be sympathetic to the idea that not everything in the world is a cosmological coincidence. I mean, think of it this way: everything that we experience, literally everything that we experience, literally everything except the concept of maybe chance, is not a cosmological coincidence, because it's conceptual, and therefore it has to make in some sort of way a conceptual norm, and that's obviously going to get you into, well, purposefulness, right? It's going to get
I
you
completely
into
agree.
meaning,
I
yeah,
completely agree.
meaning.
We never divorce a normativity from reality, and like this and like a governance of, let's say, at least like a logos in
and
relation.
and and you know, who saw this, right? I mean, a 2,500-year-old thinker that, you know, is a little bit underground, named Plato, uh, and, you know, depending on how you view and interpret Plato, as long as we don't literally think that he thought the forms existed in some sort of Platonic realm like undergraduates, there's something to be definitely learned from Platonism. that
Oh, 100%. Like I've been
yeah,
rereading the
nature.
Phaedo recently, like, and I reread the Phaedo recently, and it benefited my metaphysics immensely. And then even when I was approaching to someone like Aristotle, then it's like I understood Aristotle differently because I understood how he understood Plato better. Like even when he was referencing Plato, and it's like even these like if you read these positions, even if you don't agree with them, they will deepen your insight into metaphysics like immensely.
I mean, for sure. I have read the Phaedo. You'd have to remind me exactly what that dialogue is about,
Like
but
the immortality of the soul, but
oh yeah, the immortality.
he talks
Yeah.
specifically about the metaphysical foundations of reality in relation to. He actually brings up mind being like a fundamental, integral part of reality, which I thought was interesting. Um,
Yeah, I remember the argument being something like the mind is not a composite, or the mind can also understand universals, and there doesn't seem to be
you get
anything
those
about the world. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I get.
you get these like kind of strange arguments in them. Obviously, you get it's the arguments to justify the world of forms, like for example, the argument from the recollection argument. I'm trying to remember the names of the arguments now. So it's like the recollection argument. There's the I think there's an
It's
argument
the
from like similar.
infinity argument.
Yeah, the affinity, and then I think there's argument from similarity. Is it? Is it? The argument from it's like the one where it's like where we can extrapolate one thing existing from another thing, and he's basically positing the existence
Right.
of a logical operator. Really, I think in a very basic way.
Mhm.
Like obviously depending on how literal you get with the interpretation. I mean, the issue is Plato sometimes even like I mean the Phaedrus is just a poem, like, and it's like this metaphysical poem, and it's like trying to like devalue whether it's trying to like divorce whether Plato actually believed the earth that the soul was going to exist continuously for 5,000 years until it freed itself of this like metaphysical baggage, or
Yeah.
whether it was or whether it's like just symbolism and talking about like the difficulty a philosopher faces in the allegory of the cave.
There's, there's. I'm sure you hear the phrase occasionally because even when I was an undergraduate, I had people to the left and right of me when I took a class on ancient philosophy, well, particularly in Plato, who said something like, "Well, us moderns have this belief, and therefore Plato couldn't have possibly been right about the forms." But there's something to be said that after 2,500 years of existence and civilizations basically rising and then falling to dust, that we could still look back in Plato and grasp something from him that's invaluable. Um, and still, I think, at least in my opinion, when read correctly, relevant, and even metaphysically, and even something that we can add to our metaphysics. And that is, at least I describe myself to a form of naturalized Platonism, where I see the world literally working platonically. That is, seems to be following certain types of patterns, like we said earlier. So, I mean, we have to, I think, remind I mean, at least my students, and I think you're probably a teacher's assistant, would probably remind your students if you are teaching ancient philosophy that there's still something that can be grasped from these thinkers.
I think one of the things, I mean, like especially like one of the biggest ones for me is Aristotle, and
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely. I
yeah,
mean, yeah, definitely.
and like
Yeah, go
even what
ahead.
he adds to Plato, like when he talks about, let's say, the elevation of the forms, basically entering an infinite regress, like like well, what is the form of the form of the form, and he starts talking about these different like universals, and he says like essentially like, and then he's like pointing down in the patent for a reason of the famous patent of Plato's economy is because he's basically trying to show that the foundation of these universals are these irreducible qualities of reality, and I think like understanding that like there are these irreducible combinations which give rise to this like conceptual object, like, this metaphysical object, which is the oh god, I have no idea what the hell happened there on me chat. Sorry, Lola J. I do need to relinquish the power of the bot. It's a bit ruthless. Anyway, sorry. The this metaphysical these metaphysical divestitions of reality are actually aspects of a grounded like universal that exists in and of itself, and then obviously a genus, and the forms that Plato's talking about are what Aristotle would call like a genus, like a combination of these universals under like a more abstract explanation of reality, and like kind of going further and further out, like based on these irreducibles, is arguably even like one of the first instances of like considering first principles and so on like that. It honestly, like the amount of value that we get from the ancients is just, and this is why I still recommend them like all the time as well, because I think that there's just so much there, even in pre-Socratics, like Parmenides, Heraclitus, the present positions in ways as well that's just, it's just so easily available to the average everyday individual, because they're not speaking in subject specific language either.
Yeah, the language of the Greeks, and also a really good reason how people can sort of start out there is that it's not littered with the same type of philosophical um, vocabulary that you either have in late continental or analytic philosophy, right? It doesn't use formal logic, it uses informal logic, it uses very simple words, um, like such as beauty, truth, the good, right? Uses very concrete examples about, certain types of things like flutes being good for the person that can use them, and say Aristotelian terms like who should we give the flute to? Basically, the person who needs it, who can use it the most, right? Because they find sort of greatest amount of eudaimonia in them. A very natural use of language, I think, that can really give good foundations to how we begin philosophy.
Yeah. And
But
I think as well though, as well, like the concepts that they use as well give us like for example like eudaimonia, even it's just a concept that's unavailable in like such a discrete way within English. And like it's like, this is why like someone like Alistair McIntyre might even like calls it the language of morality, because it has concepts that are available to them like innately, like directly. And so when they're speaking, especially when you read like obviously like the when people are talking about the interpretations of certain words, we gain information just even on the words they're using.
No, I still haven't read Alistair McIntyre, believe it or not. I've heard of his books, but
I'm
I never
honestly,
got
I'm a
into it.
proud fanboy. Like I know I need to stop.
Everyone in the kitchen sink has recommended to me to read After Virtue. And it's probably something that I'm going to get into, but I know there's a lot of other meta-ethical books that I kind of want to get into
Even if you
before
just read the
that. But
first chapters on
um,
functional concepts, you'll probably be in love, because that's like exactly what I think you've been kind of describing throughout this conversation anyway.
I, for sure. I also don't. I mean, we've been talking more than we originally said we would,
Yeah,
so I
I
don't
need to
want to keep
go.
you
My
any
girlfriend is
longer.
going to murder me, like actually murder me. I do not want to be in one of those like cheesy Christmas horrors. Like
Yeah.
she'll kill us.
Uh,
Um,
Definitely give her my apologies. I am so sorry that I've already kept you longer
Oh
here
no,
than
no, no, it's okay. And
than
like obviously, I'm sorry that like when I was late, obviously like I obviously didn't get in touch the other times. It was just like obviously with not having my laptop and stuff, I didn't mean to deliberately like like stand you up or anything like that in that sense. So I do apologize even for
Oh
my
no,
like
I
tardiness
don't
and
mind
stuff
it.
like that.
I have COVID. I'm not going anywhere or doing anything right now.
Well, as long as you
So
look after yourself as well, man. Like, have a very Merry Christmas. Eat some garlic. I think I've told you this like loads of times, right? But garlic helps
yeah.
remove like garlic breath. That's actually like, from what I'm aware, it's been shown to be like excretions of garlic from your lungs themselves. And garlic's like an
Hmm.
antipathogen, so we're confident. I don't know if it's been proven yet. They're confident that it can remove deep-seated lung infections. So it's supposed to like actually aid as like a way to genuinely like help your immune system like combat like lung issues. And then I think and then otherwise I just say drink plenty of fluids, and look after yourself, man.
Absolutely. I got a comment from one of our members here. They said, "Please do this regularly. This is so valuable." So, and it was. Thank you for the conversation, perspective philosophy, or Lewis, I should say. I really enjoyed this one, especially when we get into
Oh,
not very
thank you again,
technical.
and you're welcome anytime on the channel, man. Like absolutely, and thank you to your audience as well for having to tolerate me. I know it can be a pain at times, but I do appreciate like obviously your perseverance, and yeah, like hope we talk again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. You have a good one. Merry Christmas to you, or Happy Holidays. Until we talk later.
Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and take it easy, man. Okay, so I'm gonna go off in a second, guys. But if anyone has a quick question, because obviously it's Christmas Eve, so I'm gonna um have to go and do Christmas things and just enjoy myself, really. Yeah, if anyone wants to ask a question or donate via Streamlabs to ask the question to support the channel, and I don't know, and value the Christmas spirit. But genuinely, obviously, if anyone has a question, drop it into chat quickly. I'll answer 5 questions before I go, and they can either be the questions in the chat, or there can be a Streamlabs donation, whoever gets there first. Obviously, the Streamlabs donations get priority. And as well, I'm also doing like an introduction to Western philosophy. I definitely want Marty to check it out. But if anyone's interested in getting that introduction to Western philosophy, I think I made a code for Marty, because he's an affiliate of mine, and he's promoting the course. So like it would support his channel and his work. But obviously he can review it once it's up and stuff like that. But you'll get an extra 10% off if you use his affiliate link. If you want to check out the Discord link and check out the philosophy chat, and you use Marty's affiliate link, you'll get an extra 10% off, and you'll be supporting his Twitch. He gets like 50% commission. So, because I think that's fair. Because I think, I want a kind of socialist relationship, really, like in terms of like how people should make money off the course and stuff. Did you end up agreeing about free will? I don't think we necessarily know. Like for certain, I think we agree on a lot. I think that I have to double check with them, but I think we agree on most things. If you want to support the channel, then you can either check out the course in the description link for 33% off. It's a pre-sale at the minute. It'll be available on the 1st of February. But that's like obviously if you're interested in an introduction to Western philosophy. If you are if you just want to support the channel through a donation, then it's the Streamlabs donation link. It's either pinned at the top of the chat, and it's in the description. And you also get like them cool points, man. How's your points doing, Mark? What's Marty's academic background? I'm pretty sure Marty, I'll have to double check. Marty, what's your academic? Almost called him Mary there, Jesus. Marty, that's what happens in typo. Marty, what's your academic background for my stream? Just making sure I don't misrepresent him. I'll check you out. Are you going to go for the 5,000 Republic credits option, or do you think you'll go for the higher amounts? Oh, thank you very much, Lola J. I really appreciate it. I hope you've enjoyed the discussion as well, and then everyone here who's participated, I hope you have enjoyed the discussion. Do I work out? Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I need to work out more, man. Like, to be entirely honest with you, I really do need to work out more. I just some philosophy chat. Then it's like, all right, okay. Well, do you lift weights, bro? How much can you bench? Actually, don't even know how much I can bench. It's been so long, man. I used to like be really regular in the gym, and then I became really lazy. I'm definitely going back in the new year. That's what I'm going to tell myself. Yeah, that's what I'm going to tell myself. Okay, I think Marty's gone, but I'm pretty sure he's a PhD student. I'm pretty sure he's a PhD student in, I think he's doing psychology. I'll have to double check what he's actually doing. Yeah, my back is better. I feel way better now. Have you met your girlfriend's family yet? I have met my girlfriend's family. I don't know why you're asking that. How'd you lose weight? Oh, you mean from when I was proper fatty, Lewis? Oh, that was like diet and exercise, but then I went like anorexic after that. So, but it was diet and exercise. At first, it was really healthy, and I lost about 5 stone healthily, and then I just like reduced calories, increased activity, worked out a lot, and lost weight. Yeah. But how many questions have I even asked now? All right, 2 more questions, and then I'm going to shoot off, guys. I'll probably stay until like 22 then. That'll be a round number. Really? Does it not? Should. I'll quickly see if I can resolve that. No, that's not what I want to do. Okay, I'm not going to fiddle with this just yet because I'm not entirely sure what I'm doing. So I'm going to have to spend some time actually understanding this, and I will get back to you and Mark Wicked for next stream if you want to get your stuff bought. If you want to redeem those points. You should be able to do it by typing in, it's like exclamation mark redeem and then bronze. Will I be streaming tomorrow? No, I'm not going to be streaming tomorrow. Christmas is the day off, guys. Okay. Right. If there's any questions before I go? 1 second. I don't even know how to respond to that. Like genetic engineering, I suppose. Because you can't get rid of logic. Right. Okay, that was the last one. So, right. I hope you all have a very Merry Christmas. If you like this video, please give it... Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to consider supporting the channel and, or Marty's channel, check out the links in the description for the course and for the donation to Streamlabs. And if you have anything you'd like to see on the channel, if you want to see more streams or anything like that, then check out the Discord in the description. And I have a part on the Discord where you can request certain topics and so on. And I'll do try and actually get them done, really. And if you have anything that interests you and you want to at me and ask further questions, or talk to the members on the Discord who are highly engaged and have the best philosophy memes all around, then do check out that Discord. So I hope you all have a lovely Christmas Eve. I hope you have a lovely Christmas Day. Thank you very much for joining, and as always,